This episode is brought to you by State Farm. From your morning podcast to your afternoon playlist, State Farm knows you personalize your entire day, and that's why State Farm helps you personalize your insurance with the State Farm Personal Price Plan. It offers coverage options that help protect what you care about most at an affordable price just for you. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices vary by state. Options selected by customer. Availability and eligibility may vary.
Every cup of Nespresso coffee is an invitation to transform your morning routine into a ritual you can treasure each and every day. Using the Virtuo Pop, a simple touch of the button freshly brews bold aromas and a rich, velvety crema layer for delicious cafe-quality coffee at home. Whether you enjoy your coffee hot or over ice, every sip, every morning is unforgettable. Nothing tastes like Nespresso coffee. Visit Nespresso.com or our app to explore our full range of easy-to-use machines and coffees not found anywhere else.
Callback process for this show was so strange in that it was like several rounds of callbacks. Ooh. And the callbacks, I say callback loosely because it was like we were being tested. So the first week we were to do improv in Japanese, because all of this is in Japanese. So there was a woman who was directing us and telling us what to do. We're just in a room. It was me and about 12, 13 other women just doing whatever she told us to do.
Hello world, and welcome back to another episode of Thanks for Coming In. I'm your host, Jillian Clare. If this is the first time you're listening to the show, welcome. This is the show where I speak to fellow actors about their journey and make them share a couple audition stories with me. If you're not following the show on social media, make sure to hit those links in the show notes. You can also see the entire interview with our faces and our reactions on our YouTube, so check that out. How we doing, folks? Everyone doing good? It's a crazy world we're living in right now. It's been a little rainy in Los Angeles. I'll take it. And, just working out here. Working on things. Working on this. Working on school. I'm almost done with my master's, which is crazy. And a bunch of other stuff that I can't talk about just quite yet. But, we're working. We're doing things. Very exciting. Today on the show, we have Abby Trott. She is a multi-talented artist, and you may have heard her voice in several different anime shows, like Demon Slayer, Agretsuko. Did I say that correctly? I went to the whole pop-up thing. I should say it right. Agretsuko. She's also been in DanDaDan on Netflix, Carmen, Sandiego, The Croods Family Tree, Barbie Mysteries. Basically, she is a voiceover queen, and we had a great chat. So here is my conversation with Abby. And welcome to the show, Abby!
Hey, thank you so much.
I'm so excited to have you here today. You have acted in some of my favorite shows, some of my favorite cartoons. So I'm really excited to talk to you. But before we talk about all of the great things that you've been working on recently, I love to start with the question of what made you want to become an actor?
Good question.
I know. It's always the hardest one, too. It's like, why have we chosen this?
Why did we choose this? I guess, for me, I've been acting since I was in about 6th grade.
Oh, wow.
I had a teacher in 5th grade who doubled as the drama teacher. He was my math teacher and homeroom teacher. And he forced on us in our regular classroom that we would do monologues on stage in front of our classmates.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And as a kid, it's funny, I was very kind of, extroverted when it came to being around my friends and everything. But when you put me on stage, I had the worst stage fright ever. And I would just literally be trembling out of nervousness. But I think something about memorizing that monologue, performing that monologue, it just gave me such adrenaline rush, first of all. There's that. But then also, I was really bad at expressing myself as a kid, emotions, thoughts, feelings. And I realized that the stage, I didn't realize this, but I think I felt this, that the stage was an outlet for my self-expression. And I got a little bit addicted to that, I think. So then all through, middle school, high school, I was doing theater. Still had horrible stage fright, but pushed through it, pretended like I didn't have that. And then in college, I was a theater major.
Wow.
And I just kept doing theater because something drew me to it. I loved it. I was passionate about it. I didn't realize why, and I didn't know what I wanted to do with that when I, graduated college. I didn't know what I wanted to do as an actor, if I wanted to do stage, film. I didn't even realize voiceover was a thing.
Right.
So I was like, okay, stage or film, what is it? What am I going to do?
Here's your two paths.
Yeah. So I guess like I just stuck with it because it was my best and favorite outlet for expressing myself. And yeah, I've stuck with it ever since then. I don't know. I could keep rolling with the story about how
Well, I think it's interesting that he forced you guys to do monologues at such a young age. It's such a like even as an adult, it's difficult to put yourself up there by yourself. I just did a class with Rada in November, and we had to do a Shakespeare monologue and then perform it in front of all of the class and all of the teachers. And I'm in my 30s, and yet I was still like, wait a second, I haven't done a monologue like this in a very long time. But it's interesting, like the adrenaline that you get from doing that by yourself and knowing that you've done it and feeling those emotions is just, it's so hard to explain to people who aren't performers. It's like this, it's like you escape completely and you black out.
I was just going to say, it feels like time stops when you're performing in this weird way. And yeah, something about that is addicting, I think.
It really is. I think it's like a blackout from reality. It's you've completely, taken on this different persona, and it just feels so good. And then you chase it for the rest of your life.
And like the ability or the privilege to be able to put on different personas, it is like, oh, sorry, my cat is...
Oh, you're good. I'm sure you'll hear my husband at some point.
Stepping on my other cat. Sorry, distraction. What was I saying? Just the whole idea of different personas is very empowering. It's very, for a 6th grade girl who, feels essentially very powerless in her life, to be able to do other personas that have power is like, I can see how I became addicted to theater.
And it's true too. It's for those of us who have a more difficult time expressing our emotions in our regular lives. It's such a wonderful way for us to take all that pent up emotion and put it into something that's good rather than like exploding on your partner or whatever.
Yes, truth.
So you went to college, you get this degree in theater. How do you end up in voiceover? How did you make that leap?
Okay, so this is it's a bit of a long story, but I'll try to truncate. But I, after college, did not know what I wanted to do with my life, and I had also studied East Asian studies. So I took so many classes in Japanese, Chinese, Japanese history, anime, that I just double majored in East Asian studies.
Oh my Lord.
What do you do with that? So one of my Japanese teachers asked me if I would be interested in applying to the JET program, which is a teaching exchange program in Japan. And I just wanted to travel at that point as well. I hadn't been on an airplane, so I hadn't been anywhere. And
you choose the longest flight possible to take for the first.
What's that?
You choose the longest flight possible to take for the first time on a plane.
I really did. But I thought about it and I was like, yeah, well, I'll apply and see what happens. And then I ended up getting in. And then the reality of that situation dawned on me, where it was like, oh, if I say yes to this, I'm moving to Japan. I'm moving to Japan for at least a year of my life. That's the contract, and you can extend it after that. And I was just at such a point that I was like, I have to do this. Like, this is the opportunity to travel. This is an opportunity that is probably not going to come around again. So I got to go. So I moved to Japan. Yes, my first flight was moving to Japan.
Wow.
Crazy intense. But at that point, I was so just excited that I had no fear. I was so open to whatever happened. Just the sense of adventure was so strong in me at that point that I was ready to go and just ready for whatever happened. So I went to Japan. I stayed in Akita, Japan, which is northern Japan. There's like Honshu is the main island. There's Aomori, and then below that on the west coast is Akita. So it's up there, and lots of snow in the winter. I loved it there. I made friends. I was learning about the culture, having delicious food, traveling on my time off. And I loved it so much I stayed another year, and then I was I was kind of messing around in that obviously I'm not going to be doing that. Well, for me, some people choose to stay and that is they want to teach for the rest of their life.
Wow.
I didn't really want to be a teacher for the rest of my life. So I got to a point where I was like, okay, I need to get back to acting because that is my passion and that still is my passion, acting and music. So I decided to move to Tokyo to try acting there,
Whoa.
which is crazy. So I moved to Tokyo and I lived in Tokyo for 4 years. And that is where I started to do a little bit of voiceover. So I was working as an actor. My main gig was doing these children's shows on stage that were to teach kids English. They were little musicals that by a subsidiary of Disney. And so we got to travel around Japan and perform these little shows. And I loved doing that because I got to travel. The kids were adorable. It was really fun. I loved, people that I worked with were great. We had a great time. And then also just gigging, as any actor, you're auditioning for whatever you can get. In Japan, you have multiple agents. Or as a foreigner in Japan, I didn't have a manager. I just had like several agencies sending me auditions.
Whoa.
And so I was auditioning for whatever I could get. And I did a little bit of voiceover there. I did some English textbooks. I did some promo stuff. And for the shows that I was in, one time they had an audition for character voices for these puppet characters and like costume characters that were on stage. They're called kigurumi. I don't know if there's an English phrase for that. The big costume characters.
Yeah.
They had voice match auditions. So I auditioned for some of these characters and I ended up booking several of the characters to record, additional materials that they needed for the shows or whatever. And that's where I kind of realized that I had a skill for that. I had an ear for that, voice matching. It's something I still do today. And I really loved just doing that element of performance, just the voice, focusing on the voice. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that, yes, voiceover is a career that some people, are doing exclusively voiceover. And I decided around that time that I should leave Japan just because most of the things that I wanted to do, animation, prelay animation, video games, even anime dubbing is mainly not done in Japan.
Yeah,
so,
it's mainly here.
Yeah, and so I had decided that I was going to leave Japan.
I mean, I gotta say, you are the first person on this show, I've been doing it now for almost 5 years, who moved to Tokyo to start their acting career. I love that. It's incredible.
Yeah, it feels like such a lifetime ago.
Yeah.
But it was either move to Tokyo or move back to the United States, go to New York. Probably I'm from Massachusetts, so
Okay.
New York is the closest hub for me, the most familiar, the most comfortable. And at that point in my life, moving to Tokyo seemed more comfortable and realistic to me than moving to New York.
I love that. I love that so much. It's such a crazy, like, step to take, and it's so cool that you actually, like, followed your instincts and did it.
It was overwhelming, but I'm glad that I did because that whole journey, I learned so much about myself and about the world. And if I were to have moved to New York or LA straight out of college, I don't know if I would have done so well. I don't know if even psychologically, I don't think I would have been ready for that.
And you may not have even found the skills that you're talking about. You may not have been able to, identify, oh, I'm really good in voiceover. I'm really good at the voice matching. I can spend my time here and I like it. Like, it might not have ever happened had you not followed that path that you did, which is awesome. So cool.
It's crazy.
That is crazy. So you decide you're done with Japan. You move back to the States. Did you go to LA, New York? How did you kind of navigate that?
Yeah, it was, so I moved back to Massachusetts and I was sticking around, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And then the closest hub being New York, I started to commute to New York back and forth.
Oof.
So I did some auditions that I found online, I think Backstage, or I don't remember what else I was using at the time. And I would take the bus to New York from Providence, Rhode Island. It's like a 4-hour bus ride. Take the bus one way, do the audition, and then take the bus home. So just trying to build a resume in the United States. And I remember a couple times I got a call back and I was like, oh no, like I have to take the bus, do the call back, and then take the bus home, which I did. And I ended up deciding to move to New York just to, keep auditioning. At some point I was like, I can't just keep taking the bus. I need to move to New York.
Right.
So when I was ready to do that, I did. And in the meantime, before that, I found an audition online that was hosted by Bang Zoom. They're a studio that dubs a lot of anime. Mm-hmm. And it was a voice acting competition. And I decided to enter this contest. And I did. Very last minute, barely entered, barely got up the courage to enter this contest because it was putting a video on YouTube, a couple of videos of myself doing voiceover and then a talent video, and I just did some music stuff. But I was so afraid of judgment, especially on YouTube,
YouTube can be brutal.
It's brutal. And so I was terrified, but I auditioned, and there were several rounds to this competition that happened. I had moved to New York, and then I got to the second round where I did like a directed callback. And then the third round of auditions was they flew the finalists to LA to do it's like a little mini American Idol style,
cute
reality, voiceover competition. So we did the final round and I won this contest, which was insane. All the while, this was over months, maybe 4 or 5 months, this was all taking place. And then in that time, I had also started taking commercial voiceover classes in New York, because we all know you need a commercial demo for anyone to take you seriously. So that's where I started. And once I did this contest and I saw what was in LA and I had made connections there, I decided that I had to move to LA, even I just moved to New York City, and I love New York so much. I was like, oh no, I gotta move to LA. So 6 months after I moved to New York, I moved to LA.
Wow.
And I've been here ever since. But yeah, it was just trying to figure things out. It's so hard, and figuring out what works for you as an actor is so hard. Mm-hmm. But all the signs were pointing yeah, you gotta go to LA.
Yeah.
Because
I mean, they do, I think, most of the dubbing and all of that out here.
Yeah, there is a hub. I don't know these days, but I think there's still some studios in New York that are doing dubbing. Mm-hmm. But most of the Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, a lot of anime dubbing, still commercial work is out in LA. So it just seemed like the best chance I had would be to come to LA because there was the most opportunity there. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and I was afraid I was going to hate LA. As an East Coaster, I was very snobby about it. I was like, there's no way I'm ever going to live in LA, but I like it.
I find that a lot of East Coasters have that. They're like, I'm not going to like it. And then they come out here and they're like, wait a second. This
actually
is actually kind of nice. And you're like, yes, it is. Yeah. Welcome. Come to the dark side. We're going to take a quick commercial break and then we'll be right back.
There are many ways to entice a potential new customer with flashy branding and calculated marketing strategies. But at the end of the day, the success of a business comes down to the ability to close the sale. And for businesses like Thrive Cosmetics, Allbirds, or Skims, It's what goes on behind the scenes, making selling, and for shoppers, buying, simple that makes the difference. For them and for millions of businesses, that difference is made with Shopify. Businesses that want to grow with Shopify. Because if your goal is growth, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. And Shopify will make sure you're ready. On the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Nobody does selling better than Shopify. And with Shop Pay, they boost conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going. It's no wonder Shopify is home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/realm, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/realm to upgrade your selling today. That's shopify.com/realm.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? Well, with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills. Wait, did I say job title yet? Get started today and see how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
And back to the show. So you move out here and you start working at some point pretty quickly, I'm assuming, after this competition. And
Yeah.
what's that like? How do you find your feet?
It was hard. So I made connections via this competition with casting at Bang Zoom, and then some of the other judges were actor directors at other studios.
Okay.
They then introduced me to these studios, and so they were sending me auditions, and I was rapidly running out of savings from Japan. Like, after living in New York and moving to New York and then to LA, I had like $0 left. So I was so close to getting a part-time job, as you do as an actor. In New York, I was working like 3 different part-time jobs.
Gotta do what you gotta do.
And moving to LA, I really didn't want to do that because now that I had these audition opportunities coming, I wanted to be as available as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So I really pushed it, didn't get a job, barely started booking work to scrape by. And also, when my teacher from New York helped me get an agent in LA. So he recommended me to an agent who was coming over from Abrams at the time in New York to the LA office. And so I got an agent that way. And so just as I was about to have no negative money left,
Yep.
I started booking work, and I was able to not take on a part-time job. And I think being available too helped me just take whatever opportunity I could get. So
I think there's something to that too. It's like when you're about to hit the rock bottom, the universe is just like, all right, here you go, you committed. Here's your reward. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But
sometimes it doesn't work.
I feel like in this industry, it tends to do that. It tends to be that. All right, so let's talk about some of the stuff that you've done. You've done Barbie Mysteries. You've done Carmen Sandiego. Oh my God. Agretsuko, which I loved that show.
Yeah.
The Croods. DanDaDan. Is that how I say it?
People are pronouncing it DanDaDan or DanDaDan.
DanDaDan.
In English, a lot of people say DanDaDan, but I think in Japanese it would be DanDaDan. So I've been saying DanDaDan.
DanDaDan.
Yeah.
And Demon Slayer, which has to be probably the biggest thing for you, right? I mean, that's been a constant. And there's a movie coming out, and it's gonna be in theaters, and that's crazy.
It's crazy.
What's your favorite type of voice to create? What out of those projects? What is the one that really sticks out to you?
Oh, that's a hard question. Like, there's no one character or one voice. I think one of the things about voiceover that I love is that every time I'm doing a job, it's different,
Mm-hmm.
Like in Carmen Sandiego, I loved doing Ivy so much because I got to do the most insane Boston accent. Pretty exaggerated. And I got to record with amazing cast members. And that voice is like pretty close to my speaking voice, but just, the accent and the attitude take over.
Yeah.
Same with Momo from DanDaDan. She isn't too far removed from my normal speaking voice. She might be pitched a little higher, but it's just about the attitude with her. So like my normal speaking voice, I'm just kind of like, have this low muttery voice that Momo does not speak like that. She likes to yell. But creating other character voices, it can be one of the most fun aspects of voiceover. And some of my favorite jobs have been voices that are just like so far removed from what I sound like. For example, there's a video game called Bug Snacks.
Okay.
You probably haven't heard of it,
Bug
but
Snacks.
it's a wild game. It's kind of like Pokemon in that you're catching these creatures, these bug snacks, that they all say their own name, like Pokemon do, but they are food, and you eat them, and then your body becomes them. So like you'll eat a honeybee, and then part of your body will turn into that snack. It's so strange. In the end of the game, it gets really wild and trippy. So I don't know if anyone listening has played this game, or look at YouTube videos of people playing this game. It's wild. But I got to voice some of these bug snacks, and there's one of them is a living rack of ribs called Ribblepede. And this was a session where we did not know what the snacks were going to sound like until we got to the session. And they're like, all right, let's figure this out. You're going to be a Ribblepede, and this is what it is. And like, what do you think that would sound like? And the voice that we landed on was,
Ribblepede, river, Ribblepede.
Oh my God.
So it's like, I don't speak like that. It was fun because we got to create a voice, on the spot. And that that is just so fun and exciting to me when you get to make up wild things like that.
I mean, yeah, I think that's also one of the things that I find most intimidating about voiceover is the ability to make such a large decision, right? Like when you're working in film and television, you can really say, okay, well, I know the pacing, I know what they're going for, I know where my choices need to kind of lay in, right? But with voiceover, they're just like, here you go. It's anime, so do this type, but like do what you want with your voice. And I think it's so freeing, but it's also terrifying.
There are certain parameters that you can gauge within voiceover if you know, like for example, video games, most of the time they are going for that cinematic performance. So they don't necessarily want you to jump in with a ribble voice. It's just like, depending on the project, it helps if you can gauge the tone and of what they're looking for. For Bug Snacks, that works because it's, bonkers. But for a lot of video games, they are looking for like on-camera cinematic style of acting. But I would also say that yes, as a voice actor, you have to be ready to look like an idiot because we do insane things in the booth. And when I'm performing in the booth, I'm flailing, like I'm doing weird stuff with my hands. I don't know what they're thinking on the other side of the glass, but yeah, you have to be ready to not look cool.
Not look cool. I like it. Well, we've come to the part of the show where I like to ask my guests to share an audition story. It can be something funny, something tragic, the one that got away. Is there an audition story that you'd like to share with the listeners?
I have one, and it's from my time in Japan. There was a role. So this is after I decided that I was ready to leave Japan. I was at that point of my life where I was like, I'm not thriving in Tokyo. I gotta go. But an audition came along for a show, a TV show, and they were looking for a foreign woman who is fluent in Japanese, Scottish heritage. And I was like, oh, that's me. Like that, I could do this job. Oh my gosh, I have to audition for this job. And if I were to have booked this job, it would have required me to move to Osaka and film this job for I don't even know how long. And yeah, anyway, so I auditioned. I got a callback, and the callback process for this show was so strange in that It was like several rounds of callbacks. And the callbacks, I say callback loosely because it was like we were being tested. So the first week we were to do improv in Japanese, because all of this is in Japanese. So there was a woman who was directing us and telling us what to do. We're just in a room. It was me and about 12, 13 other women just doing whatever she told us to do. Then the next week, I can't remember. I feel like there's something in between the scene work. There was some other callback, and then we did, actual scene work where they're filming the audition, which made the most sense to me.
Right.
I was like, okay. All of this is in Japanese, and I felt pretty okay about my audition. I also saw a lot of the other women in this group were like really good, really solid candidates for this role. And I was thinking about it, and I'm like, yeah, if I book this, like I have to take it because this is a huge opportunity. I did not book it. And the person who did book it was a woman who applied. There was an ad for this role on Backstage. So this person, I think she was from LA, she auditioned and she booked this role. She spoke 0 Japanese. And I had been told by several friends that sometimes at a certain point, you're living and working in Japan, you become a little too Japanese and you're not foreign enough. And I might have reached that point. At the time, my Japanese was pretty solid. I passed like JLPT, Japanese language placement test, like level 2, which is fluency, not native level, but fluent. And I had multiple people ask me if I was Japanese.
You had blended in too well.
Just because, or like probably like half Japanese, half something else, I don't know. But just because I had adopted the culture so much in mannerisms and speaking that maybe I was a little too Japanese. And I don't know if that's why I didn't book this part. Probably not. But
it might have been a contributing factor.
Might have been a contributing factor. But it just solidified for me that it was time to go.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, if anything, like this role, I feel like I was like, yeah, this role, I could do this. This is me. And then it was not me.
And they're like,
I was like, okay.
You speak it a little too well. I think we're going to have to pass.
But this is also one of those stories that like I was really sad and disappointed at the time because like I thought, I'd made it through all these callbacks and I thought I really had a shot and it was a great opportunity and I didn't book it and I was really disappointed in myself, thinking like, I could have done better,
Mm-hmm.
I should have done this, should have, would have, could have. And then the more I think about it now, I just am glad that I didn't book this job because I probably would have moved to Osaka. I would have done this job and it would have been a great opportunity. And I might have stayed in Japan,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think I would have found the same satisfaction, the same opportunities that I found doing voiceover here.
Mm-hmm.
I think I might have missed that boat. So that's not to say like I might not have had a career there that I loved, but I don't know. I really love what I'm doing now. So looking back, I'm glad I didn't book this job. At the time, it was soul crushing.
Yep.
And then it's so interesting to think. I think this actress is still working in Japan, but like,
wow,
this is the opportunity for her that like she auditioned for this huge opportunity. She landed this audition and she moved to Japan, and that opened her life to this whole other chapter.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like we were
passing ships.
Like, it's really interesting to think how an opportunity like that, whether you book it or you don't, can change your life.
Wow.
So,
That's
yeah,
wild.
That's the one that got away for me, but
Aww.
in retrospect, I'm kind of glad that it did.
It was for the best. It got you to where you are now. And I think that's something that all of us performers have to kind of rectify, right? In our own brains is like, you can be really, really upset about not booking something, and then years later you're going to figure out why that happened, why that was. Oh, okay, well, if I had booked that, then I wouldn't be on this path, and this is the path that I'm excited about. So, it's, you got to have a little faith in the universe or whatever it is that you believe in, that you're on the right course.
Yeah, and it's also like as an actor, you learn pretty quickly. You're like, even though you think you're the best for the role,
It might
not
not be.
necessarily
It
true.
might not
Like
be.
there's a lot of really talented people out there and you fail all the time. You know, we're auditioning constantly and we're not booking most of the things we audition for. And that early on in my career, it was harder to take, you know, when you fail
Right.
essentially. But the more you do this, the more you realize like
Like,
that's
oh,
part of the
here you
it's
go.
part of the game.
Yep.
You fail all the time.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, so you got DanDaDan coming out in July on Netflix. You got the Demon Slayer movie hitting theaters in September. What else you got cooking up over there?
Ooh. What can I talk about?
I know.
Uh Uh, I'm gonna I'm gonna say Date Everything. It's a dating sim game.
Okay.
It's coming out now. It's pushed to June release. I don't know what day, but stay tuned for that. It's hilarious. It's a dating sim where you can date everything, like inanimate objects in your house. They're like personified. So I voiced Shelly the shelf. I'm a shelf, but my personified version is like Jim Bro, like
You're a shelf.
I'm a shelf, Shelly the shelf. You can date me and date everything. Coming this June.
I'm
Yeah, it's got like
obsessed.
phenomenal cast, like ton of voice actors I know who are extremely talented are in this. Created by some hilarious voice actors. Yeah, it's gonna be great.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. That sounds so freaking funny. Last question here. Is there a chance that you'd move back into doing on-camera work too, or going back to theater? Is that something you've thought about?
I think about it every once in a while because like there is an element that I miss of performing. I like being in the scene. You don't get to do that so often as a voice actor unless you're booking performance capture work.
Right.
But even that is a little different than, you know, doing scene work or on camera stuff. I'm not opposed to it, but it is such a commitment of time and energy that I don't know if it's I don't know if I'm gonna, you know, all my time goes into voiceover.
Yeah.
I love that. That's my passion. So I'm not gonna say never, but and I'm not opposed to it, but yeah, I don't think I'll right now in my life I don't think I have the time to dedicate to that and what it takes to
Yeah.
do that. Yeah.
Totally fair. And it's good to know your boundaries too. Like as an actor, because we want to be working so much, we want to be doing everything. It's good to say, okay, well, this is what I actually can accomplish. Like that's something that I struggle with is setting those boundaries with myself.
Yeah. It's hard. Yeah, when you want to do
Yeah,
everything, it's hard.
it's very hard.
Yeah.
Well, how can people follow you on social media to keep up with all of your projects and the cons and all the things that you do all the time?
I am on most platforms at Abby Trott, just my name. I'm on TikTok at abby.trott because the handle was already taken by the time I rolled over to TikTok.
I understand that struggle. Well, it's been such a pleasure talking to you and learning about your amazing story from Japan to Los Angeles. So cool.
Yeah, thanks for
So
having
thank
me.
you for spending some time with me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was awesome chatting with you. And oh, I did see on your social media that you're supporting us in the strike.
Yes.
We're still on strike, video game strike. So thank you for your work with that. Appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks again to Abby for coming on the show. Make sure to check out all of her new stuff hitting theaters and Netflix soon, and follow her on social media to keep up with all of her newest projects. Tune in next time for another interesting chat. And as always, thanks for coming in.
Have you ever heard about the 19th century French actress with so many lovers that they formed a lovers' union? Or what about the Aboriginal Australian bandit who faked going into labor just to escape the police, which she did escape from them? It was a great plan. How about the French queen who murdered her rival with poison gloves? I'm Ann Foster, host of the feminist women's history comedy podcast, Vulgar History. Every week, I share the saga of a woman from history whose story you probably didn't already know, and you will never forget after you hear it. Sometimes we re-examine well-known people like Cleopatra or Pocahontas, sharing the truth behind their legends. Sometimes we look at the scandalous women you'll never find in a history textbook. Listen to Vulgar History wherever you get podcasts. And if you're curious, the people I was talking about before, the Australian woman is named Marianne Bug, and the French actress was named Rochelle, no last name, just Rochelle. And the queen who poisoned her rival is Catherine de Medici. I have episodes about all of them.
Hi, this is Rob Benedict.
And I am Richard Spate. We were both on a little show you might know called Supernatural.
It had a pretty good run, 15 seasons, 327 episodes.
And though we have seen, of course, every episode many times, we figured, hey, now that we're wrapped, let's watch it all again.
And we can't do that alone, so we're inviting the cast and crew that made the show along for the ride. We've got writers, producers, composers, directors, and we'll of course have some actors on as well, including some certain guys that played some certain pretty iconic brothers.
It was kind of a little bit of a left field choice in the best way possible.
The note from Kripke was, he's great, we love him, but we're looking for like a really intelligent Duchovny type.
With 15 seasons to explore, it's going to be the road trip of several lifetimes. So please join us and subscribe to Supernatural then and now.
Hey folks, we're the hosts of Comic Sans, the podcast about comics for those who are sans knowledge. I'm Yen, a reader, writer, liver, and breather of comic books.
And I'm Nat. I used to know absolutely nothing about comics, but now...
So actually, I've got a quiz for you.
I still have a lot to learn about comics.
Thank you. On Comic Sans, I make Nat read some of my favorite works in the medium, including Saga, Daredevil, and the Flintstones.
And Yen talks about what makes that comic special. Sometimes it's a story, sometimes it's...
Paneling, gutters, page turns, colorings, lettering, semiotics, juxtaposition.
Okay, Professor, save it for the episodes.
You can listen to Comic Sans on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
You can binge our first 2 seasons. That's over 20 episodes on 20 different comics.
And we just launched Season 3, new episodes every 2 weeks.